I come from a Christian family. Opinions on Halloween are divided. Some of the family refuse to celebrate it, claiming even innocent activities like children dressing up to go trick-or-treating can inadvertently encourage dark entities into our lives. My granddad called it All Hallows Eve or All Saints Eve and believes it's actually a time to commemorate the saints. He says the traditions that take place on the 31st are harmless and in honor of the saints. It's a cause of much debate amongst the older generations of my family. What they all agree on, however, is that it's important we all meet as a family to celebrate All Saints' Day on November 1st. They act like it's a bigger deal than Christmas. The problem is, unlike Christmas, All Saints' Day, aka HALLOWMAS, isn't a public holiday, so it's difficult to get time off of work. I had no choice but to call in sick today. My brother is still at university. He messaged me this morning complaining that the others in his group project are pissed he's traveling home. I pick him up and we make the 3-hour-long drive home without incident. Although leaving work and school is inconvenient, I'm glad we're here so we don't have to face Granddad's disappointment or Aunt Maeve's wrath. Maeve is always raging at someone about something. Today is no different.
Those twins are out of control, she rants to my mom. Jolene panders to them so they think they can do as they please, and of course Roger is absent as usual.
I'm not sure I'd describe being in the army as absent, but I don't want to start a war with Maeve. Sammy, Mom says happily, rushing over to hug me. And Vincent, she adds excitedly, noticing my brother behind me. When she goes to hug him, I'm at the mercy of Aunt Maeve.
You won't believe those twins, Sam. I walked in on them messing with one of those Ouija boards last night. They said all their friends were doing it for Halloween, and you know how I feel about that nonsense. But how many times have I told you all about the dangers of Ouija boards?
She doesn't wait for me to answer.
I've told you all your entire lives. It invites bad spirits into this realm. It's not to be messed with.
I thought if you say goodbye, they can't cross over into our realm, Vince says.
That's nonsense. They can do whatever they please the moment you touch the board. Can you sense any bad presence?
I look at Mom and she rolls her eyes. Actually, Vince says, I thought something seemed off as soon as I walked through the door. He's joking, but Maeve looks horrified. I kick him in the shin. Poor Aunt Jolene looks exhausted when we sit down to lunch. She must have had Maeve berating her about her parenting of the twins all morning. The twins, Tim and Alex, don't seem fazed by Maeve's disapproval and are as excitable as ever, throwing peas at each other across the table. Vince nudges me. Looks like Berta is a lesbian again, he says, looking at a beautiful blonde woman across the table. She must be Berta's date. If Maeve starts ranting about homosexuality being a sin, we need to do more to stick up for Berta than we did last time, I tell him. Why couldn't she just keep pretending to be with that guy? I think she's right not to. We shouldn't be walking on eggshells around Maeve all the time. As we all load our plates with the roast dinner Granddad prepared to start eating, I notice Berta isn't talking to the woman next to her. Maybe they're not together after all, but then who is she? All the other adults here are married, aside from Maeve, Vince, and myself. Grandma died 3 years ago, but the woman seems too young to be Granddad's date, and he isn't interacting with her either. Ask that woman who she is, I whisper to Vince. He's more brazen than me. He's about to attract the woman's attention when Granddad taps his fork against a glass. Thank you all for joining me for another special All Saints' Day. As most of you know, it's a day for remembering every saint, but especially those that don't have a holiday named after them or were entered into sainthood in a large group. So individually—
I need the toilet,
Tim interrupts.
Your grandfather is speaking,
Maeve snaps. But I need the toilet. It's okay, go on, Granddad says. Tim knocks the table as he gets up. Maeve sighs as wine spills over the edge of her glass.
They have no respect. You need to discipline them, Jolene. Do you know what discipline is?
Oh, shut up, you insufferable spinster, Berta roars. The table falls silent. Nobody ever challenges Maeve, and I never imagine Berta using words like insufferable spinster. It doesn't seem like her. Berta continues, her voice more normal. You never say anything about anyone unless it's to criticize, like you're so perfect. What about the murder you committed in '98? A stunned silence descends once again. Vince whispers, Okay, now I'm glad I came. I don't care how pissed the group are, this is gold. I say, what's she on about though? Berta wasn't even alive in the '90s.
Exactly, Maeve snaps. She's just trying to soil my name.
Vince catches Alex's eye and they start laughing. Maeve stands up melodramatically as Tim walks back in.
Who is that in the living room? He asks.
There shouldn't be anyone in the living room, sweetie, my mom replies.
There was a woman with really long black hair when I went to the toilet, but she was gone when I got back. It's that damn Ouija board, Maeve shrieks.
Oh, for fuck's sake, Vince mutters.
How dare you use that language in my presence, Maeve rages.
You said damn, Vince counters. I'm trying to think of something to say to stop things getting further out of hand when Berta collapses. We can't wake her up, so Granddad calls an ambulance. My mom volunteers to go with her to the hospital. I say I'll follow her in the car to give them a lift back. Vince comes with me. When we get to the emergency room, Mom tells us Berta woke up in the ambulance but was incoherent. After several hours, a doctor comes to tell us they've carried out routine checks and they don't think there's anything wrong with Berta, but she needs to take it easy and we should keep an eye on her tonight. What was that about at dinner? I ask on the drive home. What did you mean about a murder? Now's not the time, dear, Mom says. Really? We're not going to ask? Vince complains. It's okay, Berta says. It was weird. I started feeling sick and there was this unstoppable urge to confront Maeve. It was like I was possessed or something. I was so angry about her causing Lorelei to break up with me. You know, Maeve blackmailed her. And then in my mind, I saw Maeve when she was my age strangling a woman and burying the body in the woods. It was at summer camp where she worked. I don't know how I knew this. It must have been similar to a nightmare. I wouldn't worry about it, love, my mom says, placing her hand over Berta's. Maeve is unusually quiet at supper, and we all get an early night. I struggle to sleep, and just as I'm drifting off, I hear voices in the hall. I banish you in God's name, demands a woman's voice I don't recognize. Then there's some furious, guttural muttering. I creep to the door, opening it slightly to peek out. The muttering is coming from a dark-haired woman on the floor with her back to me. The other woman is the blonde from lunch. I blink, and the woman on the floor is gone. She won't bother you again, the blonde woman says. It takes me a moment to realize she's talking to me. Who are you? I ask quietly, not wanting to wake Vince. St. Anne Beth. People don't know me, but demons do. Then she's gone too. I wake up in bed. The door is closed, so I guess I must have dreamt those two women? But the blonde woman was there at lunch, despite nobody seeming to know her. And Tim saw the dark-haired woman. We say our goodbyes after breakfast. Everyone acts like yesterday had been a perfectly normal All Saints celebration. It's standard for Maeve's outbursts and the arguments that follow to be swept under the rug, so I guess I shouldn't be surprised that Berta collapsing after accusing Maeve of murder is no different. 2 weeks later, Vince calls me at 3 a.m. What's wrong? I'm at the summer camp with Berta, you know, the one where Maeve worked. We dug where Berta saw her burying the body. You won't believe this, but there's a skeleton. A legit skeleton. What did you do? I ask, barely processing what I'm hearing. It occurs to me he might be joking, but he sounds unnerved. There's usually humor in his voice when he's playing around. We buried it again, but should we tell someone? Maeve might have actually killed someone. I think for a moment. The thing is, how will you explain how you knew the body was there, or how you know Maeve did it? That's why we buried it again. The body is older than we are if Berta is right about the year. I still wouldn't mention Maeve, you'll sound crazy. But I guess you could say you were planning to bury something else and found it. Hopefully they can identify the body and the family will get peace. And maybe the investigation will lead to Maeve. Vince is quiet for a moment, and I think we might have been cut off when he says, maybe.